So the last presentation of this track is from Michel Stuijt, close enough, from the CEO of Eurogiro, who I remember speaking here last year. A great presentation there. And then joined with Benoz, who's the CEO and co-founder of Rewire. So let's welcome them both on stage. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back here again after a year. Actually, one side remark to the previous speaker. I've been banking for 30 years, and my boss, when I started 30 years ago, said, "Hey, banking is people's business." So I fully agree with him. Before I introduce or let Or introduce himself, let me take you back to one of the slides of last year I presented, and I was a bit confrontational, so to speak. I invited the fintech community to be a bit more outreaching into utilizing the whole or the full value chain of payments, and not only to concentrate on the first part, i.e. making nice applications to enter a transaction, but also utilize their intellect to work at solutions on every part of the value chain, which then would lead to, and I quickly use, to also the focus on the terminator role. The terminator role is then basically allowing recipients of payments to utilize fintech's applications. So that's what was my message last year. And when I was invited to speak again for this year, I thought, well, why not team up with one of the greatest fintechs I've come across in all my visits to a lot of conferences and all kinds of meetings, or Benoz of Rewire. So over to you, for.
Well, first of all, thank you. My name is Or. I'm coming from Israel, founder and CEO of Rewire. We are building a borderless bank account, and what that means is what we're trying to do is sort of help internationals living abroad who currently rely on 3 or 4 different financial institutions or 3 or 4 different financial products to manage their funds and wealth across borders, to consolidate that into one place where they could easily manage, easily have different types of funds, different types of currencies. We're excited about working with Eurogiro, and I think that the first slide that you showed with the big plane, small plane, piggyback riding, basically, that's one of the fastest ways that we sort of identified of reaching market, and we're excited about what can be done together with sort of like the more older players' infrastructure work together with the fintechs.
Right. Just a few words about Eurogiro. We are quite a neutral institution. We connect, basically we're an infrastructure, not much unlike Visa in the early years. We connect post banks, MTOs, fintechs, mobile wallet organizations. We connect a lot of financial institutions to allow and to facilitate them and their customers to send across the world their payments. It's B2B, C2C, it's all kinds of payments. And in my many discussions with my many customers, we have 70 customers in 55 countries, and a lot of conferences, I have been able to picture together what people see as the future of payments, or the expectations of payments. Basically, there's 4 expectations that come across all the time, which is payments should be free, they should be fast, if not instant, they should be secure, and the owner should have full control. Now, we have already heard some discussions earlier this morning about PSD2. I won't elaborate on PSD2, but the interesting thing about PSD2 is that it focuses on, like what also happens in the rest of the world, on 4 players, which is banks, fintechs, infrastructures like Eurogiro and Visa and Swift, and customers. And the funny thing with PSD2, and I didn't hear Christian mentioning that, everybody talks about PSD2 as a technical thing, and everybody can get access to information, which is not true. PSD2 is focusing on letting the customer agree to accessibility to its information. And all the rest is nice to know, and it's technical stuff, but it's about the customer. And that's what I like so much from the previous speaker, which is payments is about people. Maybe you can also enlighten us a bit about some trends that you see as a fintech.
Well, of course. I mean, what we see is just based on what you're saying. So you're talking about speed. The world we come from is sort of both Eurogiro, both Michel and I. We work on two different types of customers, or two different types of regions. And so the first one will be developed countries. That's where we sort of operate. That's where we have our sending customers, our initial customers. And then we also have the developing countries, the developing regions. And I think that the trends for each type of those regions are changing. So if you take a look at developed countries, developed regions, so you talked about speed, you talked about security. I think that the optimization that is being done in terms of the payment products is amazing. I mean, right now today you can walk outside your apartment, you order an Uber, so there's no need for cash or a wallet over there, and then you go over to your favorite restaurant or cafe, you pay through a mobile wallet, and you really see all these types of optimizations that make day-to-day living for consumers much more easier. On the receiving side, on developing countries, and it's a much bigger challenge. I mean, if you take a look at villages and cities outside of, let's say, Nairobi in Kenya, or outside Lagos, Nigeria, or India, or Philippines, and it's cash-based industries. And the problem over there is that what type of payment method is accepted by these merchants, by these point of sales? I mean, Bitcoin has been talked about a lot on this stage, but can I buy milk with Bitcoin in the Philippines? Can I pay my rent in India with Bitcoin? And until there's no real use cases over there, then I don't think that there's going to be mass adoption. Certainly not in the developed countries, where payments have been year over year becoming more and more seamless, more optimized, and in developing regions, what type of payment instrument can be used?
Right. Just a little side remark. Do you know when you're speaking with people at a real blockchain conference? Does anybody know this? When you hear three words, it's immutability, exahashes, and permissionless. Then it's only the right conference that you're in and talk about blockchain. All the rest is bullshit. Sorry about my French. But talking about blockchain and Bitcoin, when people compare Bitcoin and blockchain like it is all the same. I happen to know that IBM already about 20 or 25 years ago developed technology that is pretty much comparable to blockchain. Bitcoin followed much later. The thing is, what I heard also today is that banks adopting blockchain is not yet going to happen, not even financial institutions, because it's not cost efficient yet. The reliability and maturity is not there. Look at Ethereum and the Ethereum fork. There's a lack of working experience. The mentality is not there at banks. There's a lot of talk with no action. You can see a lot of publications about blockchain, but there's no real things happening. There's a lot of regulatory hurdles. And banks are not designed to innovate. By the way, talking about innovation, do you know who did invent the digital camera? And where did he work? Do you know? Yeah, Steve Sassoon at Kodak. And when he presented his digital camera, he was basically put in an office in the basement of the company, and he was basically asked to leave. So, meaning about innovation at an institution that really has to change, the Kodak experience shows this. Innovation is not coming from the banks. So that's why I think that blockchain will not be coming very quickly adapted at the banks. But maybe you have some other opinion.
We need to separate between blockchain as technology and Bitcoin as an application. I think that the technology itself has a lot of potential. The first applications that are going to be massively adopted, again, it depends on what you can do with this currency. So in developed countries, I think that we have there are many payment instruments and structures that sort of make our lives easy. In terms of the added value that Bitcoin can bring us isn't there. So what is the underlying value? And that's a lot about the blockchain technology itself. So self-fulfilling contracts. That's in terms of developed countries. And then cross-border payments, for example, on blockchain. I think the technology is very, very interesting. I mean, in terms of if we could sort of take the banks that right now they are the consensus and they make the payment instructions, and we sort of decentralize them and we bring the power back to a bigger number of companies, and there's a lot of value. The speed would be much quicker. The cost of building these types of companies would reduce significantly. So there's a lot of opportunity over there. I think that as where the industry is right now, I'm not sure it's ready. The time it takes for the transaction to complete is still something that takes a lot of time, and because of the volatility, people aren't interested in risking the amount of money that they transact on top of the infrastructure.
Yeah, you have a good point. Another point that we already pre-discussed is my thesis that fintech has nothing to do with tech. And the point I tried to make was that almost 70% of the time of fintech is spent.
That's not true.
Tell me why not?
So fintech, right? How many of the companies are actually creating new technology? Probably not a lot, and that's why you hear remarks that say fintech has no technology behind it, but that's actually really, really not true. Fintech today is a lot about, so let's take payments for example. Let's take specifically a look at payments. The technology around payments is the amount of integrations, making money available anywhere, making money transfer seamlessly between these different closed financial institutions. I mean, ING Bank doesn't talk to the wire card, which is right on here, directly. And the technology that fintechs do bring is how do we make those transactions faster, more secure. So again, we're not developing new technology, but the amount of resources and human hours dedicated into making these payment rails is connecting any cell phone, for example, in Europe to any cell phone in India to transfer money. That's not a good example because you're not allowed to send money to a mobile wallet in India, which is also something that should be changed. But let's take that example for making it the ability to have consumers receive payments, their salary, into a cell phone wherever it is around the world, transferring those funds into a cell phone all around the world. That's a lot of technology. And take a look into the regulations that you have to you have to comply with, and the different settlements, and taking these APIs that sometimes do work, that sometimes don't work. Actually, fintech is, specifically in payments, it's much more technology than people assume. The perception is wrong because we don't create new technology. We're not developing new technology. We're using existing, improving in order to make this whole infrastructure much more quick, fast, and secure.
Cool. In your view, since we're talking about the tipping point, and should we focus on cooperation versus competition in payments?
Right.
What do you think we will be in 20 years, or even 10?
Let's take 10 years from now. I think that, so we're a fintech company. Michel runs one of the biggest companies in terms of financial infrastructure in the world. And what brought us together was, or what is bringing us together, what's the collaboration. So what that means is that we have a team of about 15 people. Half of our company are developers that came from Microsoft, from the 8200. And what that means is that they build really, really good products. They have really good experience building consumer products and building UX products. What that also means is that we don't have as good as infrastructure as the veterans have, the more established financial institutions. What we're passionate about is keeping on building these amazing products, breaking barriers, and improving the experience. Taking a consumer that usually interacts only on payments and starting to understand what else, how can we create the customer journey much more better and easier? And that means that we decide maybe not to focus at this stage on developing our own infrastructure. So looking forward 5-10 years from now, I think we're going to see many technology companies, fintechs, let's say, technology companies focusing on the consumer, focusing on the experience, making it an amazing experience for them, and then partnering up with those financial institutions, financial organizations that do have those licenses, that do have the agreements, that do have the infrastructure. And that way both win. Instead of each and every one of the institutions trying to create their own technology, their own sort of consumer applications, and having the fintechs trying to create the infrastructure that Eurogiro, for example, has been working on for dozens of years, we can each focus and then collaborate. And I think that the business model, there's a lot of room for both of the organizations to win and reduce the time to market of these products.
Time-wise, okay? Okay. Well, I have one more question or point to coming back to my point that I made last year. And then the question comes to you. I mean, for us, Eurogiro doesn't matter whether we send transactions from that side or to that side. We're just an infrastructure. My point last year was, why don't the fintechs also focus on the recipient of a cross-border transaction? Because now many of my clients, customers, have to walk 2 or 3 hours to a post office or to a bank. That has been decided that the money is going to go there instead of that they decide, I want my money to be in this and this particular point so that I can be able to pick it up easier. So, being a fintech, what are you doing to come with that?
The short answer is because it's hard. but honestly, like trying to change. So you were talking about, for example, you work in Vietnam, right? So for us as a company that's based out of Israel and Europe, trying to interact with Vietnam is something that we're interested in doing. So the question is, how do we get there? And you have to raise the right amount of capital, have the right people on your team in order to make that happen. So in a startup or in a fintech life, you really have to know where you want to focus your resources, where you want to focus your time, what you're trying to achieve. What you're saying, what the question is spot on. I mean, we see hundreds of fintechs in Europe and the US, but what about the fintechs that go to the last?
They're all here.
Exactly.
They're all focusing on how do I grab a transaction.
So I think that it has to do with information, less information about how regulation works, less opportunities to connect and network with the people who do make the decisions, a different type of culture. But overall, I think that through the sender, I think that's the opportunity to reach the receiver and basically use that relationship or leverage that relationship in order to upsell further products, to start becoming much more attractive to the receiver. And just the last thing, in order for us to really create value on the receiving side, we have to have a really good product, really good connectivity. We have to be available. And for a small company, that's a very big challenge. But again, everything can be solved, or most of the things can be solved with capital, with the right partnerships.
Last point. Do you see applications on the side of the recipient? Meaning, for example, an app where a wife can send a message to her spouse, send money to this and this point where I can pick it up easily.
Right. I think that one of the biggest challenges, we're talking about cross-border transactions, people sending money from, let's say, from the west to the east. One of the biggest challenges that the receivers have is that many times this money is received in cash, and cash is something that is hard to track. It's expensive to store. It's expensive to transport to the last mile. So a lot of the questions are, how do we overcome those types of payment products? And the answers with technology, mobile wallets, etc. But it brings us back to what do the merchants use? What type of payment instructions or instruments do they have? And if they don't accept credit card, then we don't have anything, or debit card, there's no need, there's no use. So you really have to find a specific use case. And I think that tracking and cross-border payments is one. I think that the underlying opportunity here is what you could do, like the value of a $20, $30, $40 loan in a developing country. And if we find a smart way to distribute capital across the continent, that really, I think that really there's a way to do that. I think that the outcome would be, we'll see the growth of developing nations much more quicker. And I think that's something that can be done through the bridge from the sender to the receiver.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.